Carl Jung on the dangerous strength of the lazy, ambitious man, there is a strange and terrifying type of person that most of us ignore, not because they're weak, but because they're quiet. Not because they lack potential, but because they seem to do nothing with it. They sit in silence, apparently detached, often dismissed as lazy or unmotivated. They procrastinate, they drift, they dream. And yet, deep inside them is a storm. Carl Jung would have recognized this archetype immediately. He might have called it the shadow-bound hero. We call him the lazy, ambitious man. And what makes him so dangerous is not his inactivity, but the volcanic energy building just beneath his stillness. You've seen this man. Maybe you are this man. He reads about greatness more than he acts on it. He imagines his success in vivid detail, but takes few steps towards it. He's full of plans, but allergic to execution. On the surface, he seems harmless, even pitiful. But Jung teaches us that when ambition is repressed, when the ego refuses to integrate the deeper drives of the psyche, it doesn't disappear. It mutates, it grows darker, and it waits. Here's the paradox that should disturb you. The lazy, ambitious man is more dangerous than the consistent hard worker. Why? Because while the average worker is climbing steadily, the lazy, ambitious man is compiling power. He is storing psychic energy like a battery. Every moment of hesitation, every pang of regret, every envy of someone more disciplined than him, it all adds pressure. And if that pressure ever finds direction, it explodes. He can leapfrog years of grinding with a single, obsessive burst of focus. But here's the catch: that only happens if he integrates the parts of himself he's been avoiding. Jung would say that this man is wrestling with his shadow. The shadow, in Jungian terms, is the repressed part of ourselves, the disowned drives, the forgotten desires, the dangerous truths we hide even from ourselves. For the lazy, ambitious man, his laziness is not a lack of energy, it's a symptom of self-division. He wants more, but he's afraid of what he would become if he actually got it. So he sabotages, he rationalizes, he delays.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Ask yourself this: what are you afraid would happen if you actually stepped into your full potential? Would people envy you? Would you outgrow your friends? Would you no longer have an excuse to hide behind? Jung believed that we secretly fear our own greatness more than our failure, because greatness requires full exposure. It demands that we confront every undeveloped part of ourselves. And most people prefer comfort over confrontation. But the lazy, ambitious man cannot stay in limbo forever. Eventually, his psyche will rebel. The soul has a strange way of revolting against stagnation. One day he will look in the mirror and snap. Maybe it'll be triggered by humiliation. Maybe by a breakup. Maybe by the death of a parent. But something will shake him, and when it does, the man who once seemed passive will become possessed. Not in a supernatural sense, but in a psychological one. The shadow will take the wheel, and suddenly he will work like a maniac. He will move with a kind of dark clarity, fueled not by joy, but by years of suppressed frustration. And the results will be terrifyingly effective. This is why we must take the lazy, ambitious man seriously. He is not to be mocked. He is not to be pitied. He is to be understood. Because if he ever stops warring with himself and learns to channel his inner chaos with discipline, he becomes unstoppable. Jung believed that when the conscious and unconscious mind are united, When the ego forms a dialogue with the shadow, a new psychological entity emerges, the self, a whole man, a dangerous man, not because he seeks violence, but because he is no longer fragmented. Here lies the practical challenge. If you are this man or know him, you must begin the process of integration. That means confronting the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Your jealousy, your laziness, your rage, your envy of the successful, your fear of judgment, your addiction to comfort. Jung didn't believe in eradicating these parts. He believed in making them conscious, because consciousness weakens the shadow's grip. It transforms passive self-sabotage into active self-awareness. But integration isn't abstract, it's behavioral. It starts in the smallest habits, waking up without checking your phone, finishing what you start, making promises small enough to keep. Because each act of follow-through is an act of self-respect. And self-respect is the antidote to the lazy, ambitious man's disease, self-abandonment. Here's one final question to haunt you. If someone followed you around for a day, what would they say you actually value based on your actions, not your words? Would they see a man who is preparing for greatness in silence, or a man who's hiding from it in shame? Because the clock is ticking, and the longer you wait, the deeper the shadow grows. But if you face it, if you embrace the terrifying strength hidden in your laziness, you might just become the most dangerous man alive. The weaponization of potential, how suppressed power turns into dark obsession. There's a moment, subtle but seismic, when laziness stops being apathy and begins to curdle into obsession. Not the loud, visible kind of obsession that burns calories and wins trophies, but the quiet, brooding fixation that simmers beneath the surface of the lazy, ambitious man. Carl Jung knew this moment well. It's when the shadow, having been ignored for too long, stops whispering and starts planning. What was once idle dreaming becomes internal warfare. And here's the terrifying part. When potential is denied oxygen, it doesn't die, it mutates. It doesn't disappear, it sharpens. And it waits for a host. This is the dark genius of the lazy, ambitious man. While the world dismisses him as a passive drifter, he is gathering something far more dangerous than momentum resentment. He watches others rise. He sees people with less talent, less vision, less depth, getting the rewards he fantasizes about. But he does nothing on the surface. Inside, though, he is crafting a story, a narrative where he is the overlooked genius, the destined one, the rightful heir. And every instance of being ignored, every failure to launch, every missed opportunity becomes fuel for this myth. This is no longer ambition, it's vengeance dressed as purpose. Ask yourself, what happens when the desire to create becomes infected by the need to prove? When your pursuit of greatness is no longer about the thing you love, but about shaming the people who doubted you. That's when potential turns into poison. And the lazy, ambitious man becomes something far more dangerous than a dreamer. He becomes a man with a vendetta against time. Jung spoke of the shadow as not just a repository of repressed traits, but as a living force with moral autonomy. It acts, it plots, it emerges when the ego is too weak to carry the burden of the soul's deeper longings. So when the lazy man doesn't act, the shadow begins to act in his place. It whispers justifications for stagnation, but simultaneously builds a case for superiority. It says, you're not failing, you're waiting. They just don't understand you yet. That's the most seductive lie of all. because it allows the man to feel special without doing anything. But over time, this contradiction becomes unbearable. Sooner or later, he must act or implode. Here's the twist. When the lazy, ambitious man finally moves, he doesn't pursue a balanced, healthy version of success. He goes to extremes. All the time he spent doing nothing is suddenly compensated for by pathological intensity. He overworks, he isolates, he obsesses, but he becomes addicted to progress, not because he loves it, but because he's trying to outrun the shame of having waited so long. This is where we see the rise of the overnight success who suddenly appears after years of inactivity. But it's not clean, it's not joyful. It's manic, it's haunted. And here's the philosophical question Jung would demand we ask: is this man free, or is he possessed? Because when your ambition comes from a place of delay, resentment, and internal violence, success doesn't liberate you, it enslaves you further. You build an empire, but can't enjoy it. You win, but it never feels like enough. You're not building from love, you're building from lack, from vengeance, from the need to silence a ghost that lives in your own psyche. This is where practical wisdom must intervene. If you feel this in yourself, this raw, unused potential turning bitter inside you, don't wait for a breakdown to wake you up. Interrupt the cycle now, not with grand gestures, but with small, daily acts of redemption. Start showing up for your own life before your shadow decides to show up for you. Because once you cross that internal line, once you let your potential weaponize itself into obsession, you don't control it anymore. It controls you. And while it might bring you power, it won't bring you peace. Jung warned us that the man who cannot face his shadow will be ruled by it. And the lazy, ambitious man, if uncorrected, becomes that tragic figure, brilliant, driven, and utterly enslaved to the very ambition he once ignored. So ask yourself now, is your ambition clean, or is it covered in the dust of delay, the rot of shame, and the hunger for revenge? Because if you don't take control of your potential, something else will. And it doesn't care how many people you hurt on your way up, it only cares that you burn. The alchemy of integration, how to turn inner chaos into relentless creative power. Carl Jung didn't believe in eliminating the darkness within us. He believed in transforming it. And that's where the lazy, ambitious man's story can take a radical turn, not into destruction, but into alchemy. Because once you've seen the chaos inside you, once you've tasted the bitterness of delay, the shame of wasted time, and the rage of suppressed ambition, you are faced with a choice. Either you let it consume you, or you transmute it into something greater. This is the moment where philosophy becomes survival, and survival becomes art. This is the alchemy of integration. And to integrate, in Jungian terms, is to make the unconscious conscious. It is to bring the shadow into relationship with the ego, not to be ruled by it, but to recruit its energy. For the lazy, ambitious man, this means no longer pretending he isn't powerful. It means owning both his laziness and his ambition as parts of himself, not as enemies, but as signals. Laziness isn't just sloth. It's often a refusal to do meaningless work. It's a protest against misaligned values. And ambition isn't just hunger for achievement, but it's a cry for full embodiment, for the soul to be made real in the material world. Here's the key insight: your laziness is trying to tell you something. But so is your ambition. And the alchemy occurs when you learn to listen to both. What if you've been lazy not because you lack energy, but because you've been trying to force yourself into someone else's path? What if your ambition has been distorted because you've never clearly defined what success actually means to you? Jung would say that until you know yourself, your actions will always be reactive, not creative. But you'll always be chasing shadows instead of casting light. Integration begins when you stop fighting your contradictions and start mining them. When you ask, why do I crave greatness but avoid effort? Why do I dream of impact but fear responsibility? Why do I romanticize success but dread the discipline it requires? These are not weaknesses to hide, they are data points from the unconscious. They are messages. And the lazy, ambitious man becomes powerful the moment he stops avoiding these questions and starts living inside them. Let me give you something practical. Take a journal. Write down every recurring thought that stops you from acting, every excuse, every narrative. I'm too late. I'm not ready. I don't know where to begin. I don't want to fail publicly. And then next to each one, write the voice behind it. Is it fear? Is it an old teacher? A parent? Your own ego? What you're doing here is not self-help. It's psychic excavation. You're naming the ghosts that have been silently directing your life. You're exposing the unconscious scripts that keep you stuck. And once they're exposed, they lose their power. That's the first half of integration. The second half is ritualizing action. You cannot think your way out of this pattern. You cannot meditate it away. You must act, but not in a chaotic burst, in a sacred structure. We create a daily ritual, not a schedule, but a devotion, something that is non-negotiable. Maybe it's 1 hour a day of focused creation. Maybe it's 20 minutes of physical training. Maybe it's writing. Maybe it's building. But whatever it is, it must be treated as sacred. Because it's not about productivity, it's about integration through embodiment. You are teaching your body and your mind that your ambition is no longer a fantasy, but it's a practice. And over time, something miraculous happens. But you stop being tormented by your potential. You stop oscillating between self-hate and self-delusion. You become aligned. Your laziness doesn't disappear, it becomes discernment. Your ambition doesn't burn you, it fuels you. You become a man who no longer needs to be told what to do because his very existence is directional. Every breath, every step, every word intentional. So let me ask you this. What if your greatest enemy has never been procrastination but misalignment? What if everything you've labeled as weakness is actually raw energy waiting for a form? That's what Jung meant when he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You are unintegrated, and the difference is everything. Because once you integrate, you don't just become productive. You become inevitable. The final evolution, why the world fears a man who has awakened late, but fully there's a certain kind of man the world has no defense against. Not the one who's always been ahead, not the golden child who succeeds early, but the man who waited, who wandered, who wasted himself, and then woke up. The man who looked in the mirror one day and saw not just potential, but failure. And instead of collapsing, he chose to rise. Late, yes, but fully. That man is terrifying. Why? Because he has nothing left to prove and everything left to build. He carries the fire of regret in one hand and the sword of clarity in the other. And the world does not know what to do with him. Carl Jung would have called this man a fully individuated being, Not perfect, not flawless, but whole. He has met his shadow. He has tasted the bitterness of delay. He knows the cost of laziness, the sting of envy, the ache of wasted time. And he no longer runs from it. He uses it. That's what makes him different from the average success story. He didn't climb steadily, he fell, then forged his way back. His ambition is no longer naive. It's tempered. His drive is no longer frantic, but it's focused. Ask yourself honestly, what would your life look like if you stopped trying to catch up to others and instead mastered your own terrain? This is the final evolution of the lazy, ambitious man. He stops comparing. He stops explaining. He stops performing. He simply does the work, quietly, relentlessly. And because he started late, he no longer has the illusion that time is infinite. Every hour matters. Every conversation has weight. Every decision is a line in the story. He's rewriting his own redemption arc. But this kind of man is threatening. Not because he's aggressive, but because he's free. He's not addicted to validation. He's not seduced by status. He's tasted failure so deeply that success no longer owns him. He can walk away from deals. He can say no to comfort. He can cut distractions without guilt. And that kind of freedom terrifies people who are still trapped in performance, in pretending, in chasing applause. He becomes a mirror, and people don't like what they see reflected back. This is why the world often tries to undermine a man who awakens late. They'll call him obsessed. They'll say he's changed. They'll mock his new routines, his silence, his standards. But deep down, they know they feel that he's not the same. He doesn't need their approval anymore. He's no longer trying to be interesting. He's trying to be effective. And that shift from spectacle to substance is a revolution. And here's the deepest truth of all. The man who awakens late is more dangerous than the man who never slept. Because he's endured the psychological crucifixion of watching years slip by. And instead of numbing himself to it, he let it carve him open. He let it teach him. And now, every step he takes is earned. Every goal sacred. Every failure accepted. He is no longer at war with time, he is in covenant with it. That's why he moves differently. That's why people sense something ancient in him. He's not just building a life. He's atoning for the one he almost lost. And so I leave you with this final question, one that can't be answered lightly. What would happen if you stopped hiding behind your potential and let your past failures become fuel, not shame? What if you stopped running from the years you lost and let them forge the man you still have time to become? You don't need more time. You need more truth. And the truth is this: the lazy, ambitious man is not a tragedy. He is a sleeping god. And once he awakens fully, fiercely, finally, he doesn't just succeed. He rewrites fate.